Iran's covert war on Israel isn't just happening in the Middle East. U.S. and Israeli officials say Iranian operatives recently plotted to assassinate Israel's ambassador to Mexico. Now, that plot was thwarted over the summer with help from Mexican law enforcement. I'll read you in on the details of the plot, and it's just the latest in the Iranian regime's ongoing campaign to kill and kidnap their perceived enemies across the globe. We begin this afternoon with details of an Iranian plot against an Israeli diplomat in Mexico, exposing just how far the mullah's shadow war against the Jewish state now reaches. News broke on Friday that agents linked to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, engineered a plot in late 2024 to assassinate Israel's ambassador to Mexico. U.S. and Israeli officials say the scheme, which remained active into early 2025, was ultimately foiled over the summer by Mexican security services working with U.S. intelligence. That's according to a report from Axios. Sources familiar with the matter say that the shadowy Unit 11000 of the IRGC's Quds Force hatched the plan. That's the same unit behind recent plots against Jewish and Israeli targets in Australia and Europe. To lay the groundwork for the assassination, operatives with Unit 11000 reportedly spent years recruiting Iranian agents across Latin America, using Iran's embassy in Venezuela as their base of operations. When the plans were finally ready to be set in motion, the recruits assumed operational control, while the Quds Force operatives returned to their headquarters in Tehran, likely in an effort to give the mullahs some plausible deniability should the scheme come to light. Anonymous U.S. intelligence officials say the threat is now fully contained, but additional details remain thin. They declined to say exactly how the operation was stopped, citing operational security, though Israel's foreign ministry publicly credited Mexico's law enforcement agencies for disrupting, quote, a terrorist network directed by Iran. The assassination plot is part of a familiar playbook from the mullahs, one that's focused on targeting their adversaries in areas where they ostensibly feel safe. By waging a covert war on the West, far beyond Iran's regional boundaries, through shadowy networks of intermediaries, the mullahs are able to pursue their subversive agenda while simultaneously insulating the regime in Tehran from diplomatic blowback. A U.S. official told Axios, quote, "This is just the latest in a long history of assassination attempts by Iran around the world, targeting diplomats and journalists, dissidents, and anyone who disagrees with them, something that should deeply concern every country where there's an Iranian presence," end quote. No surprises here, but Iran's mission to the UN in New York declined to comment on the reports. In the past, however, Iranian officials have blasted allegations that their forces and proxies are engaged in a global campaign against Tehran's opponents. Oh, how would they do such a thing? Calling it nothing more than politically motivated propaganda. And they managed to say that with a straight face. But as has been documented over the years, the Iranian regime regularly makes a mockery of the international rules-based order, whether it's through their nuclear enrichment program, or funding of terrorist proxies throughout the Middle East, or a campaign of transnational repression. In late August, for example, leaders in Australia abruptly severed diplomatic ties with the government of Iran, accusing the mullahs of paying local criminals to carry out anti-Semitic attacks in a brazen attempt to sow discord and spread fear among the country's Jewish population. They took the unprecedented step of expelling Tehran's ambassador to Australia, marking the first time since World War II that Australia has expelled a foreign diplomat. And earlier that same month, the U.S., the U.K., and 12 other countries issued a joint statement denouncing the Iranian regime for engaging in an ongoing campaign to kill and kidnap people in Western countries, including dissidents and journalists and senior political figures. The plots often combine espionage tradecraft with leveraging organized crime networks to carry out their dirty work, again, all in an effort to create distance between their attacks and the mullahs in Iran. As our regular listeners may recall, Britain has become a target of particular focus. Over the summer, a UK parliamentary committee found that Iran has targeted, quote, prominent Jewish individuals in Britain for murder or abduction on at least 15 occasions since 2022. Separately, MI5 Director Ken McCallum previously disclosed that British agencies actively thwarted more than 20 Iran-linked plots in 2024 alone, and foiled an Iranian-backed terror attack in Birmingham just back in May. In the U.S., we know of multiple regime-backed plots that have been disrupted since 2020, including thwarted assassination attempts in New York and Maryland against Iranian defectors, as well as, of course, their efforts to target President Trump and former members of his administration for assassination. All right, coming up next, facing more than 1.1 million casualties since invading Ukraine, the Kremlin is now looking to Africa to fill the gaps in its depleted ranks. I'll be right back. Hey, Mike Baker here. Let me take just a moment to talk about protecting your hard-earned assets. Now, did you know that gold is up around 40% this year? That's not speculation, that's just reality. And if a portion of your savings isn't diversified into gold, well, you could be missing the boat. Here are the facts. Inflation is still too high, and the dollar is still too weak, and the government debt seems almost insurmountable. And that's why central banks are flocking to gold, and they're the ones who are driving prices up to record highs. But it's not too late to buy gold from the Birch Gold Group. Birch Gold can help you convert an existing IRA or a 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. And you don't pay a dime out of pocket. Just text PDB to 989-898 and claim your free information kit. There's no obligation. It's just useful information. Look, the best indicator of the future is the past, and gold has historically been a safe haven for generations during times of economic uncertainty. So text PDB to 989-898 right now to claim your free information kit on gold. Again, that's PDB to 989-898. Protect your future today with Birch Gold. Welcome back to the Afternoon Bulletin. This morning on the PDB, we highlighted the high casualty rates suffered by the Russian military since the start of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Now I want to spotlight one of the ways in which they're coping with those staggering losses, particularly the recruitment of Africans. On Friday, Ukraine's foreign minister revealed that more than 1,400 citizens of 36 African countries are fighting on Russia's side in Ukraine, many funneled into high-risk assaults in the Donbass. They're often lured under false pretenses to fight, given promises of high salaries for non-combat-related work, ostensibly far away from the front lines. But once they arrive in Russia, they're forced to sign contracts in a foreign language, briefly trained, and then shipped to regions where the fighting is deadliest. That's according to a report from Reuters. The Ukrainian foreign minister said the deceptive recruitment tactics are part of a broader strategy by the Kremlin to augment its fighting force amid their staggering losses, which now surpass 1,000 per day. He described the contracts presented to new recruits as, quote, equivalent to a death sentence, and urged African governments to issue public warnings to their citizens. In a post on X, he said, quote, foreign citizens in the Russian army have a sad fate. Most of them are immediately sent to the so-called meat assaults, where they are quickly killed. The comments came after South Africa's government said Thursday that they had opened an investigation into how 17 of their citizens ended up joining Russian mercenary forces after the men sent distress calls pleading for help to escape Russia and return home. And just last month, the government in Kenya said a number of their citizens have been detained at military camps across Russia after getting tricked into joining Moscow's military. Ukrainian officials say the total number of African recruits is likely far higher than the 1,436 that they have identified to date. The foreign minister said Kyiv would soon release more specific information regarding the various countries and different regions where the Kremlin is mining for fresh manpower. We already know, however, that the tactic is not contained to just Africa. Over the past 2 years, Moscow has turned to recruiting mercenaries and unsuspecting foreigners wherever they can find them, including Asia and the Middle East. Reports last year indicated that Russia was actively luring men from India under false pretenses to fight in Ukraine, though it remains unclear how many they ultimately recruited. There were also reports that some 15,000 men from Nepal had been enlisted into the Russian military. Generally, Russia has focused their efforts on impoverished nations, where promises of lucrative jobs in Russia are often too enticing to ignore. Of course, the Kremlin has also turned to foreign fighters through more formal partnerships, like with North Korea. The Hermit Kingdom has sent an estimated 15,000 troops to bolster Putin's ranks. Those forces were mostly deployed to the Kursk region near the Ukrainian border in an effort to claw back territory that had been seized by Kyiv. Earlier this year, Britain's Ministry of Defense said roughly 6,000 of those North Korean soldiers have been killed or wounded, accounting for nearly half of the initial 11,000 troops that were sent. The overall lesson here is that if you're a foreign fighter, the Kremlin will happily send you to the bloodiest areas of the front lines. For the Putin regime, the strategic benefit of this tactic is clear, particularly given the 1.1 million casualties that the Russian military has suffered since invading Ukraine. By outsourcing the dirtiest fighting to recruits with limited rights, the Kremlin can partially mitigate its domestic casualty count and keep its wartime messaging at home tighter, all while, of course, grinding forward on the offensive. And that, my friends, is the PDB Afternoon Bulletin for Friday, the 7th of November. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at pdb@thefirsttv.com. And don't forget to check out our latest episode of The Weekend Show, the PDB Situation Report. We've got former UK Ambassador Edmund Fitton-Brown joining us to review the current state of the Gaza ceasefire, such as it is, as well as military veteran and former CIA officer Adam Hardage. We're discussing disinformation and misinformation and the impact of AI on Generation Alpha. You can catch that show on our YouTube channel at President's Daily Brief and, of course, on podcast platforms wherever you get your podcast stuff. I'm Mike Baker, and I'll be back over the weekend with the PDB Situation Report. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool. Hey, Mike Baker here. Now, I've got an important message for dudes everywhere. Look, have you ever felt awkward walking into a pharmacy and picking up a prescription for something personal? Maybe you're wishing that the pharmacist would lower their voice. So maybe you're picking up something that you think to yourself, you know what, I'd rather do this in a more discreet fashion. Well, I've got a better way. Meet Rougiette Ready. It's a next-gen ED treatment made right in the U.S., and it's the first to target both brain and body, boosting arousal and blood flow in just 15 minutes. And get this, with effects lasting up to 36 hours. Seriously, 36 hours. Rougiette Ready is a fast-acting dissolvable tablet formulated with clinically proven medications for ED. Now, getting Rougiette is easy, and that's important. Answer a few questions online, get reviewed by a doctor within 24 to 48 hours, and receive discreet delivery. No insurance, no pharmacy lines, no embarrassment, just fast, effective results that you can count on. Ready to give Rougiette a try? It's simple, and you can get 15% off your first order by going to rougiette.com/PDB and using the code PDB. Or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this offer. Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment, a really positive, nice, and kind comment. That would be appreciated. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily updates.